Okay, everybody, welcome. This is Whiskey Wednesday Weekly. I'm your host, Ken Boone. This week we have a coach of baseball. He'll get into what level and where he's been and all that good stuff. His name is Brandon Hawkins. Welcome, Brandon.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, man.
No worries. Well, first of all, I'd like to just say to everybody that if you guys would be so kind and subscribe, like, comment. Obviously, YouTube, videos do better when people are subscribing and liking and commenting. And I think Brandon's interview is going to be amazing. That being said, Brandon and I met, weirdly enough, my daughter, who's 23, I mentioned her several times. She works at the Scream Zone in Del Mar, which is a scare fest, I guess, every year they have pre-COVID, obviously. And for the last 3 years, she's been there, and she just goes, hey, you should, hit up this guy, Brandon. He worked there, and he's a Padres coach, I guess. So I guess I just broke the news on what you coach now, but
that's okay.
Anyway, very cool. He was kind enough to do it. And I know that Brandon's got a lot of other passions because I see him post every meal he eats on Facebook, which again, it's not bad food. He's like really good at it. So obviously he's got a passion for cooking, and we'll get into a little bit about his story. So Brandon, obviously everyone's listening, and, obviously people know that I'm, a little pre-educated on your story. So I'd like to kind of take a few minutes and maybe spend 5 minutes on where you grew up. I know you were a local San Diego kid. A little bit about why people thought you were the perfect, child and your life was perfect. At least that's what on the outside looking in, and kind of go from there.
Great. So I grew up in Vista, born and raised basically in Oceanside Vista area. And as I grew up, I had a pretty cool childhood, but, it was one of those things where, my dad worked really hard, contractor. My mom would, she was a school secretary at the time, and then taught some jazzercise classes. And the funniest thing is they went to an Optimist Club dinner, right, where you pay your $100 or whatever to donate, and they won a brand new Cadillac. And from that point on, everybody in the world assumed we were rich. We had a decent house, but that was it. It's like they got lucky and basically donated, and you got a ticket and a dinner, with your steak dinner or whatever, and they won a Cadillac. And from that point on, everybody thought we were rich. I mean, it was crazy.
And you always have to seem to explain that, right?
It was just one of those things.
The people that knew you obviously knew better, right? They knew how you won it, but on the outside looking in, everyone's like, oh yeah, Brandon, he's too good for us, or, what's he got to complain about or whatever. So discuss a little bit though. You were youth sports. I mean, obviously, every kid growing up and reading your story, you followed your dreams. And I know we all do follow certain dreams, but I'm a baseball fanatic. That's all I played, lived, breathed as a kid. Obviously, we all have that dream of, playing second base or, for the pros. And that was kind of my position. And just tell me a little bit about your journey as a kid, not so much Little League and all that, but where did baseball come in, and why did it affect you like it did?
Well, it's funny, my whole dad side of the family, my biological dad side of the family, and my dad that raised me, their whole side, Dodger fans, both. I mean, adamant, the gear, hey, your team sucks. The Dodgers could be 0-50 at the time, and your team still sucked, even if they're in first place, right? And they were just adamant Dodger fans. But my dad, who raised me, Russell, he was a Padre fan. And I grew up listening to my grandma every day when I would go to their house during the summer. She'd have Vince Scully on as she's cleaning the house or cooking, or she did tons of artwork and did some cool stuff and crafting. Vince Scully's on the radio, right? But my dad, we started going to games. And it was once I got into playing a little bit, I was well, we're in San Diego. I'm going to be a San Diego fan, right? Because that's kind of how my mind went. And the other thing was everybody was telling me how bad San Diego was. The Dodger fans and whoever else, San Diego sucks. And I kind of took that role of, I'm going to support the underdog, and just I ran with it. And I got lucky. A friend of mine, when we were about 10 years old, he and his dad and mom and everybody piled into this RV, and they're, hey, we're going on a little vacation. Ask your parents if you can go for the weekend. We end up in Yuma at spring training as a kid. And I'm just sitting there. And what was cool then is the big leaguers were literally playing on a diamond that you'd play on at a sports park where there's chain link dugouts. Right. You could walk up and have conversations. I literally had a couple Padres hand me money to go to the snack bar. Hey, if I buy you a soda and a hot dog, bring us some hot dogs. And I started thinking, man, this is a cool life. They're playing baseball and eating hot dogs and just shooting the breeze at each other in the dugout.
Different time back then, for sure.
Oh yeah, totally different. And it was like, I started thinking, I went back and it was right about baseball season. And I went back with a glove full of autographs and all these memories. And it just went from there, where I was just like, hey, I'm going to play baseball. I'm going to be a pro baseball player. That's the life for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we'll kind of break real quick, because I've got another part of the section I want to go with that particular section. So Brandon and I both have 3 whiskeys tonight. We obviously, I don't want to make him go out and buy whiskey, and I've only got a couple that he had, but the Black Label, Johnny Walker is the one he has. He seems to be a Scotch guy. So what we're going to do is we're going to crack open this sucker, and we'll go ahead and do a little cheers toast. Much as you want. It's up to you. You're not over here at my house, so you can do whatever you want. Now, I'm not a huge Scotch guy, okay? But, I definitely do dabble in almost every whiskey possible. So I've had them all on the show. But, here, cheers.
Cheers to you, sir. That's pretty good.
That is good. I mean, you can't ever go wrong with Johnny Walker.
No.
I mean, have you ever had the blue?
Never had the blue. I have never.
Now that changes things. That's
Really?
A beautiful, beautiful bottle. I mean, you can taste the peat in that, but it's very smooth. There's no, you just got to appreciate good whiskey for what it is, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's Irish, Japanese, whatever. So in saying that, and feeling a little bit warmer now, I feel like your story, and there's a lot to it, but what I would like to get into is there's a lot of haters, right? So when you were saying to yourself, man, all I want to do is breathe, eat, sleep, be a Padre, be a baseball guy, whatever it was, haters always hate, right? They're going to tear you down in some form or fashion. So You've always said, you told me that, people thought you were too small, too slow, not smart enough as far as maybe quick on your feet. It sounds like you were a good school student, but as far as being smart in baseball, what did you say to that? And what made you go to that next level to kind of hush the noise and really pursue your dream?
Well, the crazy thing is I was a really good athlete. Like, I was super fast and strong. I was just like, I played outside like all day. Unless it was like snowing kind of thing, I'm going outside to play. And so I didn't realize how fast or strong I was until I started like getting into stuff and saying, hey, I'm as fast as this guy. Or people would say that's our fastest guy in school. And I might be just as fast or faster than them, right? And I just kind of went, I'm going to be better than those guys. If they're going to tell me I can't do it, I'm one of those guys. If you say I can't do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go, okay, I might not tell you I'm going to do it, but 2 or 3 weeks from now, I'm going to show you want to race again. Let's go for it. And I just started thinking, man, if you're going to tell me that I can't do it, why? I'm just learning how to play the game, and the other guys at that point were a foot taller than me and big, and I hadn't had any kind of growth spurt at that time. And I just started literally taking a tennis ball and throwing it against my garage and reenacting great plays I saw on TV, like on Saturday Night Baseball or like, what is it now? They don't, This Week in Baseball, right? They don't even show that anymore. And right. I'm watching Ozzie Smith, Gary Templeton, all these great shortstops making all these plays. And then I went outside and my dad bought me this like old net that I had, and I just hit it off the tee into the net. And while everybody else is messing around, I'm going like an hour or 2 a day playing in my mind games. Like literally, I'm playing a full World Series in my head, announcing it as I'm going along, like 3-2 ground ball. Hawkins picks it up, fires it across the first. And Padres win the World Series or whatever team I was that day. And because at that time, a lot of good. The Tigers were really good. So I started picking on American League teams. So the A's started to be fun to watch with Ricky Henderson and that whole group. So I just started to use my imagination, and it actually I started realizing, man, I'm getting better because I'm taking 100 to 200 ground balls off the garage. Now it's driving my mom nuts while she's at the house because it's just clanging off there. But she's like, hey, if you're happy and you're enjoying it,
right,
keep going.
You're out of my hair.
Yeah. And, I just continued to do it. And what got me was weird. Is like, I didn't realize no one taught me how to hit until I got older. So I was hitting right-handed. So I wrote left-handed. I played basketball, everything else left-handed, but I had a right-handed glove. So I learned to throw right-handed. I mean, I played football. I was a left-handed quarterback for a while.
Wow.
So it was like, but I started thinking every infielder except for the first baseman is right-handed, and I want to play middle infield, so I'm going to be right-handed. And I just learned to throw right-handed. And then I started thinking, I started switch hitting, playing wiffle ball. And what we did with wiffle ball, because my friends that I had were like a year or two older or younger, it was very competitive. And we had the perfect setup in our yard where it went into a street. And then there was a hedge that was right field in the neighbor's area, a center field home run tree, and a roof. So it all it just worked out,
Right.
And I started thinking, man, left field's a little shorter. I'm hitting left-handed. And we played it with tape, so you could throw it and go fast. So it's really simulated. And I started realizing I could hit left-handed. But nobody would let me hit left-handed until I got out of high school.
Oh, God.
And that was the crazy thing. So I'm like flailing away. I'm not really getting taught a whole lot about hitting. The whole part of like in high school now, it's like you hit all the time. I mean, it's like nonstop. My arms falling off throwing BP every day. When I was coaching high school, you go in, you get your 10 hacks, like you bunt 2, you hit and run, you sack fly, you get 5 swings, no matter what they are, whether the coach hits you in the head or they're 5 perfect pitches.
I know it's terrible because I coached Little League for 7 years, and you're like, I felt bad for those kids. I always ripped my arm off throwing 140,000 pitches that day.
Yeah, and then that's the thing. You just get what you get, and you hope that he throws a couple strikes, and you did most of my work in the tee or in the cage. So
yeah, but it's funny. You have a lot in common with me. I mean, I don't want to get into my story, but I was the same way. Even though I kind of felt like I was a small kid, but I probably would have been good enough to go further. But I didn't really have the support. I mean, no offense to my parents, but it was a broken home and no money whatsoever, and didn't really even know what avenue to go. But I'd throw into a taped strike zone as a pitcher. Because that was my real dream, to be a pitcher, and hours and real baseball on brick cinder block. And I taped it, and I would just be out there for an hour or two myself, just hitting the strike zone, hitting the corners, doing the same thing. So that's usually baseball players are built like that. Let's be honest. Most professional athletes started that way. But you mentioned 3 guys that were a big influence, and I don't know where they fall in the story, but based on your summarization, it seems it's about right now. So tell me a little bit about those guys in maybe a sentence or 2 about each one and what they did.
Okay. So Mr. Foster was a teacher. He was my math teacher early in high school. And then he needed a TA for work experience. So he was a math teacher and he taught work experience. And back then it was a little easier. If you had a job, you got a job, you walked in, boom, here you go. And you sign it up. You sign up the paperwork with the counseling office. Yeah. Well, what he did with me is he taught me how to do it I believe the first month of my senior year. And he's like, hey, I want you to be able to do the job. I mean, if I'm not here, you got to answer the phone and say, hey, this is Brandon, and what can I do for you? So if some auto repair shop calls and say, is Johnny working? Is he doing okay at school? I call and say, hey, is he doing okay at work? Is he showing up on time? Is there anything we can do? He gave me that opportunity to be like an adult before I was an adult, and trusted me, and to log it and talk. And I even got to call if there was an issue and talk to grown men that are our age now as a 17-year-old kid going, hey, so what's going on? And he just taught me how to use the phone really well, how to deal with the teachers if there was an issue. If say a kid was going at missing 6th period for work because maybe his family needed him to work, I had to do that. And he really kind of put me under his wing and showed me how to be an adult.
They trusted you, which is a huge thing.
Yeah, and it was really cool. I mean, to this day, I think about him when things come. When we do math or anything, Mr. Foster's, it pops in my head because he was just this really patient, cool teacher who cared about the kids. Yeah, and it wasn't just me. He cared about everybody, which was cool. So he was. You
got a guy named Tommy Davis.
Tommy Davis was like a second dad. This dude. So he played I know he played baseball for a long time, but he started playing pro fast pitch with the other guy I talked about, Stephen Fields. And when I was a little kid, I'd go watch him play at the local park. And they were facing this Australian guy that was throwing 101, I guess, or some kind of equivalent, what I remember from that softball distance, and watching him play and him and Steve play. And then they end up being my high school infield and outfield coaches. Oh. And he just taught me how to play. He was patient. Here's how to play the middle infield, how to be around the bag. It's the first time somebody taught me how to play that I didn't see from either This Week in Baseball or from watching and just seeing it. Right. And he changed my world, really. He was just like that big brother or dad that just goes, hey, we're going to show you how to play. And no matter how cocky you are or how much crap you're giving me, I'm going to go and go and go. And then he ended up starting like showing up before our practices. We'd show up and I had a free period because I was a senior, and I'd go home, eat lunch, come back. Tommy's hitting me a million ground balls and throwing me BP in the cage before our team even shows up.
Oh, wow.
You know, and it was just one of those guys. And I ended up working for him, and he taught me how to deal with people. He had a window cleaning business, and he showed me how to collect money, you know, bill people, talk to them about it. And I worked for him for quite a few years. And it was like one of those experiences where you look back and you're like, hey, I love Tommy. He's a cool guy when you're doing it. You know, hey, I'm getting some money. He's cool. We get to go have lunch together about once or twice a week. We're always together, you know, eating lunch and talking while we bring lunch. And he just like trusted me enough to do those kind of things.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have played and coached baseball.
Right.
Because I coach a lot like he coached, you know, so it's a big influence.
Yeah. And that to me is important because, you know, we always talk about a lot of different people on the show and the turns and the influences or the decisions they make, you know, like this path went that way, but that's the one I took and it was the harder path. And that's what really made me who I am today. And like you, I've got, you know, similar stories as well. But, you know, I feel like some people don't take advantage of that, right? Like some people don't rise to that occasion. Some people could see a guy, you know, and go, whatever, you're an old dude, or, you know, like have that wrong attitude, right? And not embrace the situation. And that's what makes you, you know, unique. I mean, let's be honest. There are plenty of people that are driven and do a lot of things out there. I'm not knocking anyone like that, but it's a rarity that, you know, it's a lower percentage of people that take advantage of situations like that. And it's all even less rare opportunity for people to actually step up and give you the opportunity. Cause you know, today it's all about me, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't want to jump too much ahead, but there's a certain section that I want to make sure. So you're in transition now, right? So we're kind of at the after high school, kind of your coaching. Let's kind of move to that. So what made you decide, or at what point did you know you weren't going to be able to play pros, but coaching was kind of going to be more your passion?
Well, the funny thing is, like with Steve Fields, the other coach, he was my neighbor. Like our yards kind of butted up against each other
today,
between like a yard, so we could see each other. Yeah, not anymore, but like
when you were young,
through high school. And there were times where like if I'm screwing around or not doing it, he could yell back at me, and you know, I could visit, or he would just, you know, at school we'd see each other and he'd be on me a little bit like, hey, I saw you screwing around, your girlfriend was there, you know, that kind of thing, you know, like just to keep me on my toes. And it was a safety guy, you know, it's like great guy. And I knew that, hey, if I needed to talk to somebody about it, he was there. And then I started playing, and I got like out of high school, I started playing in a Mexican league, literally with a bunch of grown men. And it was funny enough, my freshman coach who cut me at high school ends up being my coach in this league.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm playing a bunch of guys that are like grown men throwing anywhere between like 85 to 91 all over the place. Guy could throw 10 strikes and then hit the next 4 or 5 guys in the head kind of thing, you know? And when I first started playing, none of the guys on our team acted like they spoke English. And I was the only one that did. And I was like, okay, I'm the new guy. I get it. And then but our catcher, one catcher got arrested, I guess, for drunk driving. The other guy got hurt really bad in a fight. And I wasn't playing full time. I was like sitting here playing there, you know, getting some time at short and second. And he's like, hey, we need a catcher. Well, I had catcher's gear. And I'm thinking in my head, my first thought is, oh, I'm playing every inning of every game now. I'll catch. And then I caught for an entire summer and a fall for him. And he just trusted me to go catch. And I just reached out to some of the guys that I played with and asked them, hey, I'm having a little trouble with the ball to my throwing side. What do you do? Well, are you blocking? Or are you stabbing? That kind of stuff. So they kind of coached me up. And then I started watching more pro games. Like, okay, how are they receiving? And as soon as the teammates saw that I could hit and I was good at catcher, all of a sudden they all spoke to me every day. Like it was fine. They knew you know, and then they went back one more summer, that next summer, and we played and we traveled all over the place and we played, and I got to play shortstop almost every game. And I just flourished from there. And then I just started, like I met my wife, and when I started working and getting like in that finishing school time, and like, you know what? I'm getting to that age where I'm like 21. I'm like, not going to play. I'm not drafted. I'm not signing. I'm not going to go through that. I'm going to sit in the minors for 10 years and get paid a couple $100 a week.
Right.
And I just decided, hey, I'm going to go and get a job. And I started coaching for my high school coach at his batting cage and doing lessons and cleaning it up and like sweep band, digging out the trash. But I looked at it like, hey, I can hit. One of the deals is I'll pay you. And when there's downtime, I can hit. And what did I do? I hit and hit and hit. And then I realized how to hit because I taught myself how to hit. And then I went to the men's league and went and started playing against some like legit men's league teams, like a college summer league type teams. And these guys are coming in. And I'm like, if I would have learned that 2 years ago, I would have been playing big league baseball.
Right.
Like it was just that click.
Right.
And that made me think, how many people are like me that don't get that like little bit of like, whoa, hey, this is how you do it. It was more of, hey, they would tell you how to do it, right? Throw strikes, hit the ball hard, catch the ball, throw it. And then the other end of it was, there was no teaching. It was just, there was emotion.
Yeah, just telling. Yeah. Like, gee, how about you show me? Maybe, right? Now you mentioned your wife and how things change. Is it because, I mean, we all have a story of how, once we met our wives, things changed. Is it because you're saying that it changed because then you realized you need to settle down because you're starting to have kids and think about the future? Is that what it was? Or was it more like she was an epiphany and kind of gave you a different direction?
It was more of a, like, because my parents had divorced during my senior year and it was like all over, and I'm older and I was mature anyway at that age. And I was kind of like, I'm going to be on my own. And I was that guy anyway. I'm just going to barrel through it.
Right.
And, it's like I'm going from one house to the other and I'm thinking, I'm going to Palomar, and then I'm thinking, oh man, if I move, I got to go to Miracosta or vice versa. And finally I said, I'm going to move and go to Oceanside. And I ended up going to Miracosta, and I'm in the counseling office. This is the best part of the story. In the counseling office, and there's this sweet lady at the desk, right? And I see her for about a week or two during the registration and all that. But I had a weird, they gave me a weird class, and I needed to change it. And the other side's busy, and I realized she's the counseling secretary, and I'm like, oh, this is perfect. She looks super sweet. I'm gonna go talk to her. So I talked to her, and we're talking about my classes, and she's trying to hook me up. And all of a sudden, this pretty little girl walks in with this big smile, and I'm like, oh man. And I'm like, I'm not listening to the lady anymore. I'm looking at the girl, and all of a sudden, that's her daughter, and that's just their mom. And I'm like, oh wow. And she introduces me, and then I kind of follow her out and do the old like, hey, how's it going? And then ask her out, and then
the rest is history.
Here we are. Yeah, we're like almost, we're been going since 93, 94. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Because I mean, that's wow. Okay. So I graduated in 89 and then I met my wife in 93. So we're pretty close. Yeah. That's pretty accurate. I've been with her since 93, married in 96, but yeah, so we're about probably the same age, give or take. So that's good. So things, obviously, like I said, I don't ever want anyone to think it's a negative, because it's like, it's real life, right? You've got to kind of move on at some point, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to go into our next whiskey. I've got Knob Creek Smoked Maple. This one I picked up 2 weeks back. I've had Knob Creek before, but there was a tasting and I said, you know what? I'll do it. I'm not a big flavored guy, but the good news was this was still 90 proof. So usually those flavored ones are kind of diluted and everything. Yeah. So what are you getting into, the red, or are you getting into?
I'm going to go with the Tennessee Apple, Jack Daniels.
Perfect. So we both have flavored ones.
Yeah. I figured just to start right there with it.
You got the apple. I've got the bacon.
Cheers. Exactly.
Cheers. That's good.
Yeah.
Now, I've never had the apple, Jack. I've had the apple crown on the show, but I didn't even know Jack made an apple until you posted it like a week or so ago. So,
yeah, and I was kind of shocked. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll go for it. And I'm like, whoa, it was a nice surprise.
It is a little refreshing. Like I said, I've never had the Jack, but I mean, apple's apple. I'm sure one's better than the other, but I thought the crown apple was pretty surprising too.
It's got the crispness to it. That's
while we're sipping a little whiskey now.
Okay.
I want to kind of get into your coaching, okay? Because it seemed like it's a path, right? You were talking about high school coaching, you did some of that, college camps, and then this coaching epiphany, because you said you kind of weren't real good at it at first. So kind of in a nutshell, the next few minutes, explain your coaching before you got to where you are now. Okay. Explain what really got you coaching, what made you go from I'm not real good at it to realizing, I can do this for a living, or I love it. And this epiphany you're talking about.
Okay. So I was starting to coach already. I had, our youngest son was going to be like in T-ball. I was already coaching in the men's league. So it's like an 18 over league. And we were in like an upper division. So I had a lot of good athletes, and the league was really good. Great guys. Like I'm friends with a lot of those guys still today. The commissioner's still the commissioner from back then.
Oh, wow.
And it was like high-end baseball for college athletes, whether they were in college or just out, or guys that just got done playing pro ball kind of thing. Some place to either come back to or transition to try and make another team. And I was like, you're just managing and getting guys in and out. You got maybe 12 guys to 25 guys, depending on how many guys are available. And I started realize not my personal skills, but the way I was coaching them the way I would coach myself, like being hard, like, hey, this is how I do it. And then thinking this is the way to do it, not realizing other people have other ways to cope or get better.
Yeah.
And I started coaching our youngest, right? Or our oldest now, but then he was our only child. And he had a coach that was okay, but there was no coaching or teaching going on. It was more like, this is how we're going to do it. Hit it off the tee, go get it. And I'm like, oh boy, even for 5 and 6 year olds, at least have a general idea. Like I'm not about winning at all at that point.
Right. Of course.
Like, they have to at least know, hey, every play is going to be either at first base or home probably at that, depending on if they catch it in the infield or not. So, hey, if you catch it in the infield, throw it to the first baseman and hope that he catches it or she catches it. And if it's behind, get it in the infield. And the next year I went and started coaching, and I got lucky and got a couple guys that were with me that were great, some great kids. And I've been lucky my whole life to mostly have like great parents. You get the ones or twos every once in a while that aren't the greatest people, or they don't like you because you're not you don't want to keep running up the score when you're up by 40 in the 5th inning, And I was like, okay, I'm getting better at it, but God, I'm just not there yet. And then I realized, like about 5 years into it, a buddy of mine that was playing for me, him and I got into it a little bit in the dugout about like something. And he asked, because I let a kid, like, so at that point, you're like develop, like in the spring, you develop, in the summer, fall, you're trying to play a lot. And then we started going to the Men's League World Series, and we were still pretty competitive because we're that college age or just out of college age, and we got pro guys on the team and in the league. So you're like, you don't want to get struck out or look bad. And we were all good. And we were at that point where we could, if we had 1 or 2 more players, we'd be really good.
Right.
And he came in all frustrated. He had a bad day. It's been like a doubleheader. We're getting our butts spanked. And I started realizing, man, the way he was talking to me, he was frustrated with his play and the team, not just the team losing. And he couldn't figure it out. Like I could see, we've all been there where you can do it, but you're in a rut. And at one point, like I looked back and he was like 1 for 17. And I was going, whoa, you know what? It's a little bit of frustration with me because we're losing, and frustration with him because he's not playing his best. And then I can't step back. So I waited, like, and called him like 2 days later. Like, hey, let's go hit, right? Kind of like, we'll go find some place to hit.
Right.
So we went and hit, and I just threw BP for like an hour. Just to him. I didn't hit at all. Let's do this, man. I need to get my arm ready for high school season anyway because I throw BP all the time. And we just talked, and we threw, and like, hey, work on this. If it's inside, pull. If it's away, wait a little longer and hit it over the second baseman's head. And it was like I started feeling my groove of, God, if I just talk him through it, it's great. And then I started doing it with little kids. And when I got a high school job, I was like, oh man, I'm really getting to this point where I started going, I coached at a couple high schools, and then I got a job in Oceanside where it was a great job. I loved the kids. I knew most of the kids and the parents, and it was the right fit. I had a lot of them in Little League or currently in Little League because I was transitioning up. They played for me and one of my best friend in our Cannon Summer League teams. And all of a sudden I started realizing, hey, if I coach them and talk, like I would try and teach you a trade, right? I'm not going to say, here's the hammer, go frame that house.
Right.
Right. and you've never done it before.
Exactly.
You know, it's like, okay, we're going to show you.
You got the tools, but how the hell do I use the tools, right?
Yeah. And that comes back to like, we had kids, like I bought a $300 bat. My kid's not hitting. Well, a $300 bat's not going to make him hit.
Right.
He's got to still work at it and have a plan. And that's part of the thing is like, I started having a plan. I had a plan for our infielders, our plan for our outfielders. I knew what we were going to do base running wise. I like to be aggressive as a player. And so did my buddy, Mark. And I was like, we're going to go all out. Even if it costs us games here and there, we're going to teach our kids how to read ground balls, read fly balls, steal bases. If you get thrown out, so what? But if they don't practice, they're never going to get good at it. The timing and all that. And the groove hit. And it was just like, all of a sudden I realized that was my niche. Teaching my way, not teaching what everybody else taught, but the way I felt comfortable. And all of a sudden that was the epiphany, like, oh my God, be myself. And because I'm Shell, I talk a lot. It's super energetic and like we get fired up. And if a kid's terrible and all of a sudden he does something really great, our team is taught to like see that and raise that guy up and go, look, he hasn't got a hit in 6 months because he just started playing. But look, now he's on our team. We accept him as a teammate, and he got a hit. And my guys, I mean, I'm still friends. I will say friends now because some of them are like 25 and 30 years old from when I first started coaching. Facebook friends, they'll call, check in at Christmas time because of that bond. Like myself, not just me, but like Mark, and that kind of that era of group. That group kind of figured out, and then like, a lot of them are great dads. They've all gotten into coaching. They're coaching now, and it was like we just figured out our strengths versus our weaknesses and just built off those strengths. I guess is my point.
So let me ask you, because you sound like, I mean, you have 3 kids, correct?
Yeah. And
a wife, and your full-time job during all this is a teacher?
At that point I was just tutoring, and I was getting my teaching credential.
Okay. So you're basically a coach and just kind of supporting a family and doing this as a job, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is at what point, because it seems like it's hard. Like it sounds like you were really, really always, because I have 3 kids as well. And I coached all 3 of my kids for many sports throughout years. And it's just weird how we just do it, right? Like you're like, how the hell do we make dinner? How the hell do we eat? Yeah. How do we talk? But yet there's so much time in the day, you'd be surprised, how far you can get, right? And stretch it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're running, 3.5 years of martial arts while I'm a president of Little League, while I'm coaching their team. It's unreal. So it's impressive how you were balancing everything with different leagues and different, age levels and things like that. And that might have helped you because you're going from kids to adults to the medium, and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a couple things. I don't want to miss one gentleman, but that you brought up, and we'll kind of hone in on this, and then we'll go to the last portion of it. But Terry Mcfadden, who is he and what does he have to do with the story?
Okay. So Terry Mcfadden was the freshman baseball coach at Vista when I was there. We had so many athletes that it was like, here I am. I'm like playing good. I'll try out, you get like a week-long tryout. I'm thinking I'm making the team, and I get cut, and I'm like, whoa, like devastated, right? I've been playing. I'm good. Summer ball, I played great. And I mean, a ton of us got cut because there was something like 70 or 80 that I know that I think were tried out, I believe.
And this is back when they cut players, which I always feel like is still a part of what's missing in society, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because and that was before RBV. It was a couple of years before RBV. So you had Vista by itself. So every athlete that was in Vista, which is everybody kind of thinks it's a small town, but when you spread it out and have those boundaries,
that's a lot.
It's a giant population when you think about one team. And I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I didn't know what I was going to do. I'm like, man, I got cut. So what I did is I took that like anger and frustration and practice. And I didn't take it out on Mcfadden. I was just like, okay, whatever. I was too young to understand any of that. And then it was funny. The time with Terry Mcfadden is he ended up being that coach for that summer league team.
Oh. And
we sat and talked. One day we're in the middle of like a double header, and he's like, hey, Hawk, because everybody would call me Hawk, right? I got to tell you something. And he told me the story. I didn't know who you were. There were so many kids. I went to the tryout. and I knew the kids that were there, and they were all good because there was a great group. There wasn't hardly any bad players that were trying out. And he goes, I had to go with the ones I knew, and I didn't know. And then here you are
took
playing
it a whole different way, right? Like failure and
yeah. And he asked, like, I can't believe you. He said yes when I asked you to play. Most kids hate you when you get cut. And my thought was, hey, I'm getting an opportunity to play against adults. I'm a kid basically still.
Right.
And I'm playing against adults. You know, I'm like, in my mind, here you go. Some of these guys are 24, 25. I'm barely 17, 18 during that time.
Right.
And I thought, hey, I'm thankful for the opportunity. And you trusted me to catch a team that I do know nobody, you know, and that's where Mcfadden, like, I think at one point, I think he probably thought I hated him because he was the freshman coach that cut me.
Right. It's funny
like
though. It's
said,
like when one door closes, the other door opens, right? So in reality, it's like high school, you know, granted it would have been fun or whatnot, but at the same, and did you eventually play high school ball?
Yeah, I played for 3 years and we
so it was just the first year.
Because
you had so much experience with the men's league that you're able to probably kick ass, and he's like, oh, I see this guy's potential, right?
Yeah, and then that's when Tommy, we had another coach who was the head coach, and Tommy Davis and Steve were the guys that I know really well. They were the JV coaches. So here I am. It kind of fell into coach that doesn't know me at all to people that know me, and they know how to push my buttons and they know what to say to me. They knew I was super intense, but they knew that, you know, that I wasn't gonna like be weak. They knew they could say things to me.
Right.
And there was never something I would go, oh man, that's abuse. It was legitimately like they knew how to motivate me to get the most out of myself and be like the motivational player. Like, hey, you know what? I learned to like pat the guy in the butt or on the back and go, hey man, it's okay. We still got 3 innings to go. Let's go. We got a 1-run lead. Suck it up. We got to play defense. And that's where I like all 3 of those guys, you know, I learned something from them, and it made me not just a better coach, but a better person, because I learned how to talk to people when they don't have like even at work, I use those same things. Like if somebody's having a bad day, I'll sit, what's going on, man?
Yeah.
Oh, well, my girlfriend and I got to fight. Well, dude, you're 18. Okay. It's your first job.
Yeah, you're just that guy, you know, you're an optimist, which is amazing.
And that's what I was saying. Like, just keep pushing through and find the light. So
yeah, no, it's interesting how the age bracket here, you know, that we're kind of like, I don't know, like I said, there's plenty of people that are older, younger that act like us, but I feel like we just, you know, there's that commonality with that generation, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to hit on, for the last 10 or 15 minutes, I want to hit on where you're at now. You know, obviously not right today, but I know that you have a thing called like dogs and cannons and stuff like that. Is that something you started with a friend?
Yeah.
And is that
a
batting cage situation or a clinic, or what's that?
It's their team. So we started off as the Cannons, as that men's league team, like that college league, right?
Oh, okay.
And then when our kids started getting older, we had kids. I said, you know what? Why not we can still play, and then they can play too. And we were, you know, when we started up and grabbed some coaches and bought some equipment and got these cool jerseys and hats and went out and started the Cannons. And I mean, even like we just play and
so the travel ball.
Yeah, it's like tournaments, travel ball.
Oh, okay. So you kind of created your own. Is it a team?
Yeah, it's a team.
Oh, okay.
And then I do lessons on the side. Like I do my own individual training, but that all kind of sprang from that original Cannons team. Like when I realized how to coach my way,
right.
I was like, wow, I can communicate this and people are okay with it. And then I also realized I'm not going to gouge people for it, like a lot of people do, where I'm like, okay,
yes,
you know what?
I know. Believe me, my boys played travel ball. It was outrageous. And it's like, dude, you didn't even offer like a real, like the facility was okay and all, but you know, those places have closed down, a couple of them. But so the dogs, cannons are 2 age levels there. Is that why one's dogs, one's cannons?
It was cannons was the older guys at one point. Then we started the dogs, and it just morphed into the cannons because it kind of got confusing because they were like, okay, who's who? And I'm like, at this point, okay, we've only had the dogs for a couple seasons. We're the same colors. We just morphed it all into one group. So now it's all cannon stuff.
Very cool.
It's like really, we just have kids play, and it's just a fun deal. And you know, it's like, and we started doing clinics and you know, lessons. And so it's just like I said, it morphed into this own little world where we were just like, hey, let's have a positive place for our kids to play.
Is that like an income? I mean, not the team itself, but the lessons and all that. Is that kind of like a full time, or was? I mean, is that what are you teaching now, or
pre-COVID? It was almost like full time.
Okay.
But like when COVID hit, it was like just nothing because there's just you couldn't have contact. And,
of course. I mean, again. I feel like the COVID, the fortunate thing is I feel like sports were probably the first thing to, open up at least the outdoor sports, or at least allow certain, because over there at, I think it's called Big Fly over there next to the Wild Barrel in San Marcos. I would go there and like when things were sort of open, the kids were hitting and, they had their masks on and their coaches, because I would go to the Wild Barrel and have a couple drinks. But but I feel like, that's kind of good. And I love bringing up the pandemic and the COVID with my guests, because I feel like it really did put everyone in a different grouping, right? Like you were sort of, at first, everyone kind of shut down, obviously, the whole world shut down, but you were kind of like, like on your roll and doing your thing. And then it kind of like, uh-oh. So during that time, is that when you kind of were teaching and had the opportunity to teach, or are you always being a substitute teacher at schools?
I was, at that time when it started, I was still working and doing tutoring and working on the teaching end of it.
Okay.
And it was like, the craziest thing is we were at the safari park, or when our age, the wild animal park, right?
Right.
And we were on a field trip and we were going there and we took our kids, and then you go back door in the backstage, they show them how to do all the scientific stuff, and they take us on a tour and we're eating lunch, the craziest thing. And it's right before COVID was called COVID. There was a group from Australia and a group from Japan that were sitting there, and we're all sitting in this area. And they said, "Do you mind if we eat with you guys?" And there's like 2 tables. They go ahead, and they started talking, and they were talking about this weird sickness that they had in their countries and the wildfires, right, in Australia. So they came here just to get away. They had a ton of vacation time. So they were just chatting it up, and we were sitting there as the adults chatting with them while the kids were eating.
Yeah. You don't think anything of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were talking about it. And then like 2 days later, our school shut down for COVID. Like just, the whole world is, right. Like we're like, I'm like, hey, you know what? This is kind of a serious thing. Maybe we shouldn't be here at the Wild Animal Park with a bunch of people that just came from some, the wildfires are one thing. They can't bring those with them, but if they're bringing sickness, what?
Yeah, it's weird, bro. Because I'm telling you, we were in Vegas in February as a family. Like we just did it. My boys are older, obviously. So, we're at like a resort, and we heard of it like in the news, but it wasn't there yet. It was February, like President's Week. Yeah. We're just out there having a good time. And like you said, like a month later, the world shut down, and we're like, that is so weird. Like just a month ago, we were in the most populated, probably, dense area in America, Vegas. And, all of a sudden everything shut down a month later. It's been a weird journey. So we're going to do one last shot. And then I'm going to get your closing thoughts on the whole, what you're doing now. So I've got Jameson Black Barrel. So I went with an Irish on that one.
Nice. I got a little Johnny Walker Red.
Yeah, you went with the red. Okay. So I like the Johnny Walker. I like like we already talked about the Johnny Walker, but I like the Jameson Black Barrel over the regular Jameson. It just has a little bit different finish. But like I said, I've got like 70 bottles, so I choose whatever I want.
I have it. I love the taste of that Jameson. I love that Jameson.
Oh, you like it?
Yeah, I do. Cheers, my friend.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I'm either getting really good at drinking whiskey, but they all are just, there's really not a bad one in the bunch when you.
You're right. Like that was good. I was waiting for it to be having a little more kick, and it was like right there. Like almost like, can we have another? Let's do another.
Yeah, we can definitely do one off screen, right? So in wrapping up, I want to talk about, it sounds like you've had just an unreal, like I always feel like when I bring these guests on, they're probably like, God, I just want to get everything out, and I know that it's hard, right? But we're trying to keep it condensed, and your story is so amazing. And I just feel like sometimes, certain bits get lost, but I want to bring up the good stuff. Just because those are all important turns in your life. And I think you did a great job today. But the last part is, you said something about 2019, Padres opening day. What all happened like from that point on? Because it sounds like that was pre-COVID, or where you're at now, and who's your boss, and why is everything so good? Like, you're working for the Padres. I know you can't talk a lot about that right now, which is totally fine. I'm a Padre freak, by the way.
Nice.
So, just tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. Just take 5 minutes and just kind of where it all came at the end.
Well, it's opening weekend, 2019. I get a call. It was funny. The school nurse knows, it was one of those, her and she knows you. the school nurse at my son's school that all my kids went to, right? Our current son is at the school, mentioned to a friend of mine that is a security guard that we've known forever. And since our oldest was in like biddy basketball, she was the referee. She just shows up and we're talking. It's like, hey, they're looking for coaches. And I'm like, you know what? I told myself I'm going to take a year off, just relax. I'll do lessons, but I'm not going to do any like coaching for anybody else. And she tells me what's going on. And she had all the stuff and she's telling me, and I'm like, wow. Like in my head, I'm like, no, but I'm like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah. The back of little birdie,
so
right? It's like,
yeah. So she takes off and I'll look it up immediately. And I'm looking it up and I'm like, oh man, this looks like a great time. All summer, and I could still do my lessons. At that point, I was still working at the fair as a supervisor, where I had this really cool night job where I just had fun with my friends and family that were there. And we just did customer service. So I'm like, this is perfect. It's like I can overlap a little bit, be there. And 2 weeks into the job, right?
So you got the job.
I got the job, and then get the job, and then they don't we're trained and we're doing it. And I'm like, this is awesome. And then we're having a blast, right? And then it's like the second week, and they're like, hey, the person that's going to do that does my job now is leaving. We'd like to offer you the job if you'd like it, kind of thing, right? And I'm like, no, you guys are punking me, right? Because it's a lot of people there that were like really cool people, and we got to know each other quick. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? I'm like, who's got their phone out? Yeah. And then I get a call from my boss, who's a cool, great guy, right? Takes care of everybody, great, like the ultimate boss. And he asked me if I'd like to do it. And he's like, hey, she's moving on. She got a job, as a principal at a school, and she has to leave, and it's like one of those things that, no brainer. Hey, full-time job versus finish the summer. And I took it over, and he kind of was like, make it your own. And it was like, all right, if it's going to be my own, we had like the team meeting and said, hey, let's do this. This is what we're going to do. We can amp up the energy. We can do whatever we want. Because it's all about energy and fun, right? It's a business, and it's also great for the kids. And finish the year with a little bit of instruction and his supervision. We have a blast. We go into the next year with like rules, because obviously now I have a whole year to learn what we're supposed to do and learn up. And he's like a technological wizard. We got all this equipment. Like he's got me a laptop and all this other stuff. And it's like the ultimate camps. Like if I was a kid or you were a kid, we'd go every year kind of thing. Right? We go 8 was now, it's looking at now 9 weeks this year, all over the county from La Jolla to Poway to Point Loma, and even, Chula Vista. We're all over the place. We added Encinitas this year, and it's just this, we have like a daily schedule, right? Really cool stuff we do. There's games, there's all these really neat things we do, and it's all around baseball, but community as well.
Right.
It's just a really, and his setup is unreal. It's one of those things that I wish when I was a kid, even at just regular camps, not just baseball, had the structured kind of dynamic. Not that you have to stick with the structure altogether, but here's what we have to hit on. This is why. And it's just kind of changed. I get to see pro ball players. Like in pre-COVID, you get a ball player a week that came out and hung out with the kids for a day. At Josh Naylor trying to stay when he was still a Padre the first year in Chula Vista, trying to play wiffle ball with our kids because we had such a good time. So it was one of those things where you're just like, a great job. And then he was like, hey, I want you to come back and I want you to, can you work more? Like during the summer, and he's like, no, I need you to work. I need you to be a part of the business, and I want you this part of the business. And myself and the other guy that does another team, we got, and put on our lap. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how to do it. And we've been doing it the whole off season, and it's been great. Like I couldn't be any luckier.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's like, it's just one of those perfect situations. Great boss. The people that work for him are unreal. And I just got a notice coming up about some stuff that from one of the ladies that's great, that runs everything. As it came, that's why I swiped the screen. It was like right in your face. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like 19 people just signed up. Sweet. And it's like, it's just a great, great atmosphere. And like, I could, even if I taught year round, I could do this year round, or if I coach baseball for a team, I could still do this because of the
Right.
time. And, it's like, when you get to teach baseball and learn, the community, like I get to see community the whole summer. Right. And talk to people the whole time, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, that's
not
amazing.
fair.
And it's come full circle, right? Like all the hard work. And I've always told my kids this, and it sounds like, and I always don't discount work, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like because of your past and your hustle, and it's very similar. I always tell the kids, it's who you know, not what you know, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, what you know lets you keep the job, but it's who you know that gets you the job, right? Like,
yeah. Oh,
like,
well put. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I'm a big believer in that. I'm in sales full time, obviously, for the last 25 years. And I just feel like the more connections and the more people you know, and the more love you spread like you do, by just always being like upbeat and encouraging people, I just feel like it's going to come full circle, right? And which it sounds like it did. And
it did.
we'll end on a positive. Well, it's not really a positive, but I know you're in the Padres organization, but watching Tatis last night almost, made my throat drop out. And I've been listening to the talk radio all day. And I know you're not connected. I mean, you are, but we're not going to talk about that. I'm just saying, how'd you feel about that? Because I'm assuming you're a huge Padre fan. Did that just like watching that last night? I was like, I stopped everything and told my family, you've got to see what just happened. I mean, that was unreal. I didn't know if it was his wrist or his shoulder, but it just crushed me.
Well, I knew that he had shoulder issues before, and they had like either dislocated or had some issues with it. And when he did, I was like, oh, as soon as he went down, that's my first thought. Oh, the shoulder. And then I thought, hey, as bad as it seems, Machado can play short.
Oh, yeah.
Kim can play short. Cronenworth can play short. The coach of me, I should tingle with
right, you're starting to like move players around, right?
Yeah. I'm like, okay, we got 3 guys that are shortstops that are legit shortstops playing other positions. One's on the bench full time, basically, unless he's filling in. And then I think they even like Mateo or one of the other outfielders have played short. So you got guys who can play. And then I was thinking, and then it went to automatically, I would not be on, I won't say what video game it is, but it seems like everybody that's on the cover of that video game year,
absolutely.
has a crushing year or a crushing injury. And as soon as he was on there, I was like, that is so cool. But I remember Dustin Pedroia.
It's called the Jinx for a reason.
Yeah. And I loved him. He only hit, it wasn't like he put up 25, 30 homers a year, but he was the glue of that team. And since that point, it just seems like after that cover, he had a rough time injury-wise.
Yep. Well, he'll rally around. That's the whole thing, right? Like the team now has to kind of like create this individual. And I think sometimes that happens for a reason, right? Like there's no accidents, right? Yep. Like in my mind, and we'll close on this note, but I feel like when something like that happens, it gives a chance to be like, okay, the spotlight's off. Machado is already a big enough star, but we need now him and everyone else to be like, we are a team, not just an individual. Yeah. So they kick ass. Everyone loves him. He's going to come back 6 weeks, whatever he decides to do, or whatever happens, but medically. Yeah. I feel like this is actually a better thing for them to realize they're a team. They're a badass team regardless. And then he just comes back and then they win the World Series, right?
Yeah. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? Kim gets to play for a month and a half and see every major league pitcher that he hasn't seen yet. It's like you said, you see the bright side of it, right? Right. He gets to play a lot more. Other guys are rallying around, and when he comes back, it's even more of a push because, hey, here he is, and Machado's going to have a good year. Oh, Machado's a stud. Well. He's they don't even have Grissom, and Grissom he comes back Friday, hopefully, and that's like, I mean, we're definitely going to be fine. That wasn't my worry. It's just I feel, but like you said, as a coach, I love how you think, and it's been a joy having you on here, and I just thank you so much for making the time to be on here. Obviously we can continue to talk beyond this, but I'm going to let you go for tonight, but thank you so much for sharing your story. It's never easy for someone to open up like that. And I appreciate you putting that out there. And, thank you so much. And we'll talk to you guys later. Thank you, man. I'll do it anytime. You let me know. All right, buddy. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you. All right, buddy. Bye.